Welcome to the Retrieving Catholicity podcast, where we think about life and ministry in light of the whole truth, the whole church, and why it matters for the whole world. Welcome into another episode of Retrieving Catholicity. I am your host, Mason Ballard. I'm so glad you found us here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. We are having another conversation with Derek Roberts.
We are.
Is that So, Derek is a pastor.
Yes.
I'm a pastor.
You are.
Did you know that?
I did.
Yeah. Usually people are like, oh, you're awful young to be a pastor. That's starting to change.
Yeah.
Well, then now it's like...
You look way older than you really are, though. So
I do. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't think it wasn't a compliment.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the reason for that is because I have been a pastor for 11 years.
Yeah.
And so I think I look like I'm just becoming a pastor.
Yeah. Have you seen the hilarious meme that's online of the obviously very old man?
Oh, yeah.
Who says Greg?
Yeah.
Pastor.
Yeah.
32.
30, yeah. Exactly. No,
it's a real thing.
You know, when I was 22, for example, I was used to being talked down to a lot. And occasionally that'll still happen. And I have PTSD flashbacks to when I was 22.
Well, when I was 22, I was not doing anything close to church planting. So
yeah, or maybe I shouldn't have been.
And I passed out in the gutter in Morgantown.
I've never been drunk in Morgantown, but I have been in Morgantown many, many times. And I've been sad in Morgantown many, many, many times.
I was in Morgantown for Rich Rod's first era.
Yeah, I was a kid. That was the golden era.
Yeah.
It really was.
It was an amazing time to be in college.
Gosh. Yeah, that would be the time to be there.
The ones that I remember.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, so today's episode is a little unique in that no notes. I basically have on my iPad no notes. So we have no notes. But we wanted to have a fruitful conversation and to see where it goes as a couple of pastors who are interested in living in light of the whole Christian truth, living our own little corners of the kingdom of God, and we try to overlap those as much as we can.
Yeah.
I tell people if I were in Charleston just as a person, I would visit my church and visit your church before making a final decision on where my family would worship. And so I wonder, though, if we could talk for a few moments about just some of the cultural challenges or things that present themselves at this moment here in Charleston, West Virginia, but also just broadly, in 2025, I guess, 2025 America, 2025 West, as you are just shepherding people in light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, what do you think are some challenges? Let's talk about that.
Well, the major challenges reflected in the way you even address setting up that question, because there is no just Charleston culture.
Not anymore.
Yeah. So we are dealing with the entire West's cultural issues, even though they may or may not be actually relevant to Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah.
So we're having conversations about things that are potentially completely irrelevant to the actual people that are in the pews in front of us.
That's right. That's a good point.
It's a weird world.
It is a weird world.
To live in light of the internet.
Not only are we living in a digital/physical world, but I think in Charleston is such a unique ministry setting because it is a blue dot in a sea of red.
Yeah.
Obviously, those are political labels, but I think the ethos is still true.
Yeah, I agree.
That you have people living in Charleston who are more urban in disposition, in life season. They've moved here. They're in their late 20s, early 30s. They're working for some place. They might be here a while. They might not be here a while, but they're here in Charleston. And then you have people who live in Charleston because they fancy it like a cool little city to sort of be in this little urban spot. And then you have people who, 5 minutes outside Charleston think of this as just classic Bible Belt, super conservative spaces. And so any given Sunday in our churches, we've got both of those people.
Yeah. The whole spectrum. There is, I've noticed this interesting phenomenon here where we almost take that sort of urban identity and or like a caricature of that identity and then apply it to ourselves. Because we're not a real city.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't even meet the threshold anymore.
No, not even close. And so it's like we are like going above and beyond to present ourselves.
Seem like we're Little Pittsburgh or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that presents dilemmas.
Yeah.
Especially in the church when there is this cultural pressure to be like hyper progressive.
Right.
From every angle.
Yeah.
Or to at least acquiesce to the progressive ideas of the urban environment.
Yeah.
And we are not in an urban environment in any way. I mean, you leave Charleston 5 minutes and you're in a completely rural setting.
2 minutes.
Yeah. So that does present a unique challenge pastorally because you end up with the purely rural person in the pew next to the person who's trying to project, probably not intentionally trying to project, but is projecting an image of being cosmopolitan urban.
And I think too, one interesting thing, and sort of a lot of the people in our context that are either sort of Charleston urban or more rural, neither have a lot of categories for thoughtfully not progressive.
No.
Like the category doesn't even exist. Like, I think a lot of progressive people in town assume that because we are not marching against them in the streets, that we would just agree with down the line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like, oh, you're thoughtful. You're not mean to me. You're not trying to make me feel bad. Therefore, you are progressive down the line. And then on the other side, it's like, why are you nice to these people?
Yeah,
like you live in the city, you have to be compromising to be there. It's like, how hard are they on you? I'm like, well, not really. I mean, I have, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of people I disagree with that I interact with every single day,
Yeah. And that's the answer to the cultural question is that you have to be deeply convictional in your beliefs, but also deeply human in the application of those beliefs. And have a deep amount of sympathy for the plight of other people and the situations that they find themselves in. And understanding that in the same situation that I probably wouldn't make any decisions that are different. And it's only by the grace of God that I have had the veil removed from my eyes and am able to see beyond just what's right in front of my face.
So this cultural moment, again, I don't like, I agree. Like, I think there's a couple things I would say about like the idea of in the culture of this time. One thing I would say is like, we have different cultural time zones all across the whole United States. And so, we might be dealing with somebody who's working on an antiquated, culturally speaking, way of thinking. And by the time you figure out how to reach one cultural moment, like it's past. I feel like all this literature on how to reach the next generation, it's like that literature doesn't change a whole lot, but the next generation is always changing. And so I don't get too hung up in some of that complete methodological shifts. You got to be aware of like how you're being received and how people are absorbing content and things like that. But all that to say, there are certain like watershed moments. 9/11 shaped a whole country in a lot of ways. And COVID, the pandemic certainly shaped this cultural moment for everybody in different ways. How is the pandemic over? Ministry speaking, we're not talking about illness here. How is the pandemic over, and like what lingering things do we see? Not just generally, but maybe specifically speaking.
Yeah, I think, in so many ways, the pandemic was jarring from a church perspective as much as it was in every other way of life. Going from 1 week being together to the next week. Staring at a screen. Literally.
And literally like no context for next week we might not. I remember the first time it was like, we might not be able to meet next week. I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, we will. And so you're not only are you making these drastic plans, but you're doing them like super quickly. Yeah,
so we adapted, relatively quickly. Took a pretty non-anxious stance. Cautious, but not overly anxious. But things like celebrating Resurrection Sunday in a church by myself was weird, to say the least. I'm staring at a screen with a picture of myself on it in front of me. Preaching a message about resurrection in the middle of that season was bizarre. But I think lingering effects, I think I've probably noticed that people have not returned to the attendance patterns that they had pre-pandemic. Yeah. That's just a anecdotal survey of people that are in the room with me and conversations I've had with other pastors. But it seems like whereas somebody may have been an every week attender pre-pandemic, now they're maybe 3 weeks a month, maybe 2 weeks a month. Mm-hmm. And very few people have, and they're probably related to that is maybe a hyper fear of being sick and being around other people. Yeah. Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think like in terms of like, I don't feel very good today. Like I feel like you used to just still go about your life, but now it's like, I'm out on anything that could potentially make me sick. I don't know that that's good or bad. It's just an observation. Like I'm not passing a judgment on it. I think that, there's different positives and negatives, obviously. I think one thing that stuck out was anything that was even remotely dysfunctional going into COVID broke.
Yeah. Yep.
So if it was like a particular ministry, a particular relationship, a particular whatever, like if you're going into this really trying season and you're not coming in from a place of strength, then everything that's going to happen is going to really, really, really struggle. Yeah. Yeah. And so I found it was, that happened in a few different areas, frankly, like, this particular ministry's not super strong, or like I've not been clear about it. And so now it's going to be really challenging. So I think anything that like whatever problems you brought into the pandemic were just like super hyper, like majorly became problems. And then I found there was a lot of like sifting. And so I think at some point in like mid 22, I guess probably 23, because it was super slow. I kind of like stopped the like looking back altogether and just being like, we are what we are now. And we've got to just build.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think like 23, 24, 25, yes, like members of our church, like I've talked a lot about like, hey, like we want everyone who was a part of church before COVID to like come back. But the reality is like, I can go so far to try that, but we got to build, like we got to we got to go. And, so I think like there was a sort of fundamental, like for like several years, I was okay with holding pattern. Because one of the things going into it that I tried to say was like, the what's next, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's like, well, we can't. And I liked that, like, we can't do this. Yeah. Because we love to control things. We love to, when's this going to be over? When's this going to, I don't know. I don't know. We don't control it. And I think in our American culture where we have such tight schedules and such tight plans, we communicate them so clearly, like anything that confronts that, we struggle with. So I'm not like saying, well, the right side of this deadly, terrible thing. Yeah. But I am saying going into it, that like I took that perspective a lot, trying to say like, hey, like let's let this be a reminder that we don't control nearly what we think we control.
Oh no, and it's like hard not to integrate the moment with the other cultural movements that were happening at the same time. Yeah, that's right. You have Me Too movement, you've got the Black Lives Matter movement that all come in the same time frame. Yeah. And so it was like put everything into a ball and just shake it up. Yeah. And see what comes out. Yeah, you
put everything into a ball. You put all these like anxieties, personal anxieties, social anxieties, physical anxieties, spiritual anxieties, disconnected, uprooted, untethered. Here you go.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think people, I think to this day, a lot of like leadership burnout is so tied to those days.
Oh, for sure.
We're not out of them.
No.
All the anger and angst about everything is still there.
Yeah.
And I think people that like, there are people who like thrive in that space. I'm not one of them.
No,
I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. And so people that like can just always be talking about bad things or controversial things or complicated things or complain a lot. I'm not a complainer. They don't care.
Yeah.
But when you are, when you don't do that and you're always getting negativity or like questions, it just weighs you down, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It weighs you down.
Well, and I mean, it's really hard to be negative in light of what we believe is true.
Ultimately, yeah.
I read a piece from St. Patrick's Confessions yesterday during our St. Patrick's Day get together, our men's gathering. And one of the things that struck me was that he said, I'm going to horribly paraphrase.
Yeah.
But he said, I don't know why I have been given this position of authority in the church.
Yeah.
Like I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Like what I deserve is being beaten and killed and slavery.
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, God has seen fit to give me this. And even if I were to be enslaved or beaten or killed tomorrow, it would be worth it for the sake of the surpassing worth of Jesus. And I think that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
And probably that's been the lingering effect for me.
Yeah.
It's been this like overwhelming positivity.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I don't care if I die.
Yeah.
I do not care if I suffer and die with an illness.
Yeah.
I'm not going to not be at someone's bedside when they're dying if they need a pastor.
Yeah.
Like,
right. I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, come what may, it's worth it for the surpassing worth of knowing Christ.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm just like filled with this like joy at knowing that like we've been tested and tried and persevered.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a really cool kind of thing that's come out the other side. And I've seen it in others too.
Yeah.
There's like this perseverance that may not have existed otherwise. But in terms of like stuff breaking when you come out the other side of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all integrated together, but like our small group ministry still hasn't recovered in any way that resembles what it looked like beforehand.
Yeah.
And part of that is the allegations of sex abuse that came to light in that season.
Yeah.
Clerical abuse, spiritual abuse, all sorts of things were bubbling to the surface during that season.
Yeah.
And so pop out the other side, and we now have this diocesan safeguarding policy.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful gift, right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful gift to have. But at the same time, it like makes all the things we were doing before impossible.
Yeah.
And so now we're having to think about things we never had to think about. How do you do it in a way that is safe?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously nothing is completely safe.
Yeah.
But we do want to protect our children.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what value could we have that would be any more wonderful? Yeah.
How would that be contrary to anything we're supposed to be doing?
And so,
I think it's you make a good point with like everything being all combined. It's like you're combating all these things at once for several years, and then you're trying to lead in light of things without like you're trying as a pastor now. This is as a pastor, right? We're trying to promote the gospel. We're trying to shepherd people and keep them focused on Jesus while other really important issues are going on.
Yeah.
Things like the Me Too movement, sex abuse, racial justice, all these types of questions. And I think like being a young pastor specifically and walking through that season, I was always kind of, it's such a struggle to want to do enough, right? But also come back to these questions of what am I? So what is my calling and job? And what is my role in this? You want to do that in such a way that you are not a chaplain to whatever the dominant cultural mood is. And I see that on both sides of these cultural movements. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you take racial justice like a prime example. It's like people on the left are interested in like chaplains that just sanction everything that progressives on the left want to do. And then people on the right are like, if you even talk about the idea of racial injustice historically existing, then you are inherently Marxist because you're buying into a theory.
Yeah.
And it's like, it feels like 10 years ago, you could like, everyone would agree like, hey, like there's racialized history in the United States.
Yeah.
The extent to which people can debate, but no one, at least in mainstream American life, would debate there are racialized things in our history that continue to linger into the present. And so it's difficult to navigate, I think, addressing and acknowledging difficult cultural topics in ways that are meaningful and give meaning to whatever people are talking about without becoming just like, well, as a pastor, this is what I should do.
Yeah. Well, and
everyone's trying to set your agenda for you.
Exactly. And I mean, to be frank, like we have previously joked about your tens of followers, but like, there's nothing clickbaity about a nuanced conversation.
No.
About deep things.
No.
And so like you can come up with
maybe we can try
if you got your guys hopefully can like come up with a really catchy picture to put up with the post.
Put your sandals on the
thumbnail. But the reality is that nobody is clicking a video to listen to a nuanced conversation
of gospel-centered guys who are trying not to be jerks and like literally like I could be wrong.
It'd be super easy to take a super hard line stance on
that's what people want.
Like those
that's
issues.
What people want.
Yeah.
One way or the other, you got to take a stand. Only thing in the middle of the road is dead. But I'm not saying we're not saying be in the middle of the road on them. We're just saying like there's the gospel.
Well, I would say the conversation that's happening is here and the gospel's here.
Yeah, right.
And so it's like,
and it informs and speaks, but it everyone wants someone to fight for them.
Yep.
And I wonder if there are probably moments like I wonder, you can think about this while I ask.
Yeah.
Like how you would grade yourself leading over the last 5 years.
100%.
And you don't miss, do you, bro?
No, it's
if we're doing like 1 to 10, it's like 10 I was perfect.
Yeah.
Or or 0 I was a disaster. I struggle somewhere between 4 and 7 because I think going into it at 4 and 6, I thought my reasonableness, ability to communicate, and tetheredness to the Bible would be enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just not.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, there's the intangible of maturity.
Yeah.
Plays a huge factor in those situations.
Yeah.
And using the definition of maturity that is that I'm sure I heard somewhere, but take as my own now because I can't remember where it came from.
Yeah.
You ever do that?
Yeah.
You cite those sources in your dissertation?
They're cited.
I said this.
Yeah.
Someone else I'm sure has said it.
Yeah.
But
I found this on Google. I'll say this.
The definition that I take for maturity is the how perfectly we align our values with our actions.
Yeah.
And I think that's a solid definition. The more I've kind of toyed with it over time, I think that fits super well with when I've experienced, because it's almost like one of those things that you recognize when you see it. You're like, yeah, that's maturity. That person is mature. Yeah. But it's really hard to define. But I think that's as good a definition as I can put forward. And so I think probably I would have to say, if I take my personal life and my professional life and separate them, I think personally I was way lower than I projected publicly. Yeah. Like I think I did a good job at pretending like I wasn't that scared. Yeah. Publicly. Yeah. And reassuring people and doing all the things publicly relatively well. Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, I probably would have done a million things differently. Yeah. But in the moment, I think I did as good as I could do in those moments. Yeah. Personally, I felt like I was terrified. Yeah. And I have little kids at home. Yeah. And a lot of them. And so it's like, well, what does this mean? Yeah. For my children? Yeah. And because obviously we don't need to dissect the details of the way things went about in terms of the communication of the virus and the vaccines and all those sorts of things. But it was just a very fear-inducing period. Yeah. And I did not in those moments want to become polarized. Yeah. I think trying to acknowledge that there's an actual danger. Yeah. While at the same time saying, well, there are things that are worse than dying. Yeah. Like not gathering to worship is actually probably in the grand scheme of things worse than dying. Yeah. Like if we were all to come together and get COVID together and all die, there's gain in that. Yeah. I mean, according to Paul's logic, at least. Yeah. And so at least doing something that is of ultimate significance while we're on our way to death is a good thing. Yeah. But again, personally, I go home from church and I'm like, I don't know if I believe what I'm saying even. Yeah. And so I think really tense. I think so, for me, I was so I was super I was afraid of being the reason people got sick. Yeah. Yeah. Always. Yep. And so that was always I can't push forward here. And I think I did a really good job in COVID specifically of making sure we went above and beyond to avoid things like that. But I don't think I, in the moments, communicated the necessity of embodied gathering. Yeah. But I also think maybe I did, but the people would not hear it. Because I became one voice of a billion voices telling everyone what to do all the time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's part of. Changing gears a little bit. It's related. Yeah, this is kind of depressing. Yeah, I'm done with it. Let's move to something happy.
Oh, happier.
Unless you got something less happy.
Okay, let's do this.
Even more depressing.
Thesis. I've heard people say this. You can't drift right.
Ooh.
Ideologically.
Yeah.
Agree, disagree.
Can't drift right. You got to go.
You want me to riff on it?
No, I'm going to ask some clarifying questions.
Yeah, please.
I mean, do you mean that like
ideologically?
Yeah, that you either go full sail or people are always drifting
like you
left.
drift left.
Yeah,
by nature. That's the thesis.
Yeah,
I'm not saying if I agree with it yet or not, but that's that you can't drift.
I've seen the opposite occur.
Yeah,
I mean, I've watched people drift right.
Yeah,
people who were otherwise reasonable people who have gone off the deep end on the right end.
Yeah,
just like that.
What's this going off the deep end look like?
I mean, like invading the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah, that works.
Prime example.
Yeah. But I would say the fact that people would take that and say that's not going off the deep end is proof that we can't drift right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people are drifting to the poles.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any particular direction that people
it's the magnetic pole and people are just going to both.
Yeah.
They're sliding there.
Yeah. And I think trying to
that's what's easy
to not do that.
Yeah. That's what's
harder.
Easy. Yeah. And not in a centrist way. We're not saying that.
No, not at all.
We're saying that it's easy to drift ideologically in a world of algorithms that are designed to drift.
Well, in similar to the prior conversation, that like this is a conversation that's happening here.
Yeah.
And the conversation we're trying to have is here on the heavenly plane. And so trying to remove actually the conversation from the level that it's happening and having it up here to say that like, okay, I mean, things like there are things that are worse than dying.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that does not fit into a political polemic.
Yeah.
Like there's no world to fit that into.
Right.
Politically speaking, you have to have a biblical worldview in order to even engage in that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that from a lot of people. And I think like the value in it is that like emotionally we tend to drift left. And if we're not, because it sounds nice, a lot of things sound like sound good. And that's also just the general cultural direction. But I also think history, like, you know, one of the problems with like the debate, the idea of like, you got to be on the right side of history on these debates. Who knows what that is?
Yeah, right.
Like it assumes a certain direction of history that we don't know. And I think in the US right now, like with the prominence of more right wing, like ideals, like rising up again, you know, I think that we can all drift in different ways from the gospel.
Yeah. Yep.
From caring about the gospel. And I ask all of this to be like, pastors are going to answer questions poorly about a lot of things because it's what we
probably already have today.
Oh, I know we have. I know we have. I haven't. We have got to keep like, if people are interested in Jesus, then what are we doing?
I don't really have anything else.
Yeah. Like we don't have anything else. That's it. You know? And like, I often like, I think there's this pervasive feeling that I'm not doing enough. And I get it from the left and the right. Mm-hmm. I got a lot from the left in 2020, 2021, 2022. You're not doing enough for racial justice. You're not doing enough for people who've been abused. You're not doing enough for all these things. And there might like, maybe those things were true.
Yeah.
And so I had a tender call, like I want to do more. Well, now if you just kind of like the milieu of evangelical world, you're not doing enough for the right. You didn't stand up to Black Lives Matter enough. You didn't stand up to people who were lying about situation. Yeah. You're not standing up enough for the family. You're not standing up enough against sort of the totalitarian LGBTQIA plus agenda. Like you're not doing enough. And I look at both of these things, and the reality is like there are moments in my life where I probably could be more educated on racial history. I can always make sure our ministries are safeguarded from sexual abuse to the best of my ability.
Yep.
I can advocate for a positive vision of what it means to be male and female in the home, in the church, in the world. I can do more all these things. But like underneath all of this unsettled, like I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And in the gospel, we're just reminded that like we're never going to be enough. We're never going to do enough.
Yeah.
That we are insufficient to tackle all the world's problems. And That doesn't lead us to complacency, but it leads us to finding like our own little place in God's story. And I would encourage people who are like engaging in this conversation that we're not just kind of like commiserating and looking back on like what life was like over the last several years, but like, how am I then to live now?
Yeah. Yep.
Like as a shepherd of people, I can learn some lessons from 5 years ago. I can learn some lessons from today. I've got people trying to pull me left. I got people trying to pull me right. Jokers to my left and jokers to my right. Is that Jimmy Buffett's song?
I don't know.
A Sunday song.
I don't listen to secular music.
That's good, brother.
Yeah. Only Christian music. For
yeah. Me. And I know it sounds so friggin' pietistic.
Yeah.
It sounds so evangelical. It sounds so basic. But like, do people care about Jesus or not?
Yeah. No,
and that's been the burden of my heart. Is to be like, hey, listen, like, maybe I was misinterpreting things. Maybe I didn't provide the right emphases. Maybe I've not done like everything I should do. But I just want people to behold the glory of Jesus in the Word of God.
Amen.
And come and see in Him what life is really all about. And then in each of your different spheres out in the world, like, hey, what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be an advocate of biblical values. Live it out. Don't be a coward. Like, live in the grace of God. If you're in racial justice space, like, keep going. Don't let the fact that it's not popular anymore keep you off. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep fighting against abortion. That might not be popular where you are, but keep fighting. Like keep doing things that are unpopular for the glory of God in the space that you've been given. And one of those things that I think in our space that's unpopular is to just herald the goodness and glory of Jesus.
Yeah, amen. No, and I mean,
preachy.
Well, I even take that a step further. Not only does the gospel tell us we can't handle the world's problems, we have nothing to
we can't handle our own problems.
We can't even handle our own problems.
Right. Bingo.
And so, yeah, I mean, the one thing that has pervaded my life since that season has been this personal desire for holiness.
Mm-hmm.
And to grow in that capacity to look like Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the disciplines of that have come through the history of the church are incredibly effective in that regard.
Yeah. What are some? Let's go there. That's a positive thing to talk about.
100%. I mean, I think fasting.
Yeah. Neglected for sure.
Like intentional self-denial.
Yeah.
In any way.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Is an incredibly powerful tool to show you how weak you are.
Yeah.
I think all of them, that's probably the point.
Yeah.
Is to show you that you're incapable of even maintaining the most slight level of personal holiness or discipline.
Yeah.
But I think probably community would be the one that I would add on top of that.
Yeah.
That once you've realized you're incapable of doing it on your own, that you need others to encourage you and to pray for you in that regard.
Yeah.
And I mean, even things as simple as like in moments of like experiencing temptation, like, I can't even tell you how many times like somebody's like picked up the phone and made a call. Yeah. And I like answer the phone and I'm like, are you calling me right now?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to talk.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But the deeper you go down this path, the more that's true. I think daily prayer. I mean, if I could export another thing from my tradition, I talked about that at one point, would be the daily office in the Book of Common Prayer, in terms of a structured daily liturgical prayer that is perfectly focusing our hearts and minds on Jesus from start to finish. Is the Bible arranged for prayer?
Yeah.
And that's been an incredible gift. I mean, really even like the advent of the technology allows like a podcast to have
it can have a
daily prayer. Yeah. And so like to be able to even like join with another brother, sister in the faith to be able to pray the office together through podcast form has been an incredible gift.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the biggest ones. I mean, I think there are other things that I picked up from kind of common grace sources. I think ice baths and saunas have become a huge piece of my own intentional self-denial.
Yeah.
I love standing outside the ice bath, staring down the frigid water, saying,
the gates of Sheol.
It's only through God's grace that I can do hard things.
There you go.
It is only through His grace.
Yeah.
And so when like the little hard things of life come about, you remember those moments of praying those prayers that like strengthen me, Lord, to make me more like you and more willing to pick up my cross daily and follow you.
You know, Well, I think the most underrated asset or trait in pastoral ministry is resilience.
Yeah.
The most underrated. Because I think resilience is like holiness applied to difficulty, and steadfastness and love applied to difficulty. And, like resilience keeps going. And I think that, in church planting world, here's all these statistics about church plants that fail. And I think it was Ed Stetzer one time said, church plants don't typically fail so much as church planters quit. Yeah. And again, that's not necessarily to say they shouldn't.
No, right. Yeah.
But that is the statistic, is that we talk about it as church plants that failed. But in reality, a church planter quit. And there's all these things about sort of pastors leaving pastoral ministry. And I get the temptation. I get the draw. I'm not saying there would never be a day where I'm not in pastoral ministry in my vocational life. However, I just think resilience is so, and some of those things you talk about, they cultivate resilience. Now, obviously, that's not the end. The end and goal is to behold the glory of God, and be formed in the image of Jesus Christ, to become like Him, and to commune with Him and become like Him. But I think in so doing, we are given a gracious toughness. That is if you don't have that, you're either going to be miserable or you're going to quit, or you're going to be miserable until you quit. And discipline is so crucial for that. And
the disciplines in and of themselves are inadequate.
Don Whitney says this: discipline without direction is drudgery. If you don't have that gospel-centered motivation and Christ-centered destination,
it's just as easily the legalism I grew up in.
A new form of legalism, or Islam.
Absolutely.
So many young men interested in Islam because of the clarity and the rigidity of it, and I
think that is something that has. I was having a conversation with a counselor buddy last week, and he was explaining these 4 phases of the development of the human heart, human mind, human spirit, however you want to define it. Human soul be a good Hebrew way to think about it. But he talks about kind of phase 1 being in pure fight or flight. It's where you're thinking with your amygdala, and pure base desires are the only thing that control your behaviors and your motivations. And kind of on the other end of the spectrum, they're being fully flourishing, contributing to society, human being. And he said that step 2 is processing and dealing with our past hurts and experiences and wounds. And he said, unless you do that before you move on to the disciplines, which is stage 3, then you've already missed the boat. You're just going straight to legalism.
Interesting.
And so it's I could think of so many conversations I've had throughout the history of my life in the church that explain and give weight
in
to
real
that.
life.
Where it's well, you just need to read your Bible every day. Well, that's an inherently good thing, but if I'm locked in fight or flight mode, that's not having any impact on my actual application of that to my life. And so there have been many moments where dear brothers and sisters in the faith have helped me process through past experiences and disappointments and griefs and hurts and traumas. And so when you apply actual gospel forgiveness to yourself, where you hear the words of Christ from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, as being for me. Father, forgive me for I didn't know what I was doing. And receiving that grace, and then stepping into the disciplines. There's an opportunity for life and resilience and maturity that is available there that can't be achieved any other way.
And I think too, there's I look at my own life and ask what is mitigating against maturity, what's acting against what is good in my life, what's acting against what God's doing. And I think
besides our phones.
No, that's where I was going. That's what I mean. That's where I was going. It's a no-brainer. It's sometimes the most obvious answer is, and so I think today, to use a word that used to 10 years ago was huge, and now it's poo-pooed, radical. Everyone hates David Platt now, but I still think his book was helpful for the cultural moment. I think you can misinterpret it, but that's not necessarily his fault. But I think a radical thing is to just re-ask, what is my relationship to technology and what's it doing to me? I feel like I locked myself into a dissertation bunker for a lot of the fall. And I did like what I had to do to like complete this big project, you know? And you say, well, when I finish this, I'm going to read a lot of books. I haven't read jack squat because I've been too busy scrolling.
Yeah.
I was reading more not related to my dissertation while I was in the throes of 12, 13-hour writing days because my brain was working like a brain.
Yeah. Yep.
I was eating food. I wasn't just snacking 24/7. And one of the reasons we can't think, like, behold the glory of Jesus in the pages of Scripture is because we can't look at pages.
Yeah, can't focus. Yeah.
We can't do it. We have less, we have less attention span than goldfish now. And we've got to walk this tightrope. We're obviously engaging in media right here.
Yeah.
We'll clip it up into shorts and we'll put it out there. Like, we'll have short things because we want people to read it. But we have to also fight. We have to acknowledge and work in those spaces, but we also have to fight those things. Like my ability to behold true, good, and beautiful things is diminished by incessant scrolling or by what I do to my brain in those senses.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just like, obviously there's all kinds of books and studies. And one of the things that's I think really helpful for men as they battle with pornography is demonstrating what physically is going on.
Absolutely.
And a lot of those are similarities to like just scrolling, like social media, Reddit, like whatever the things are that you kind of get into the algorithm and just go.
Yeah.
And YouTube content, like I've found like I'll turn on like a podcast, just go let the dogs out. Well, it's like when there are moments of just silence in my life.
Yep.
And you don't need to become a desert monk to value silence.
No.
So we can, us theologians can retrieve a monastic spirituality, or we can just say, "Hey, shut up for 10 minutes." You know what I mean? Like we don't. I would love to frame it as retrieving monastic spirituality, but I'm talking to Joe Bob, who knows he's on his phone 24/7, and say I wouldn't need to say like retrieve Saint Anthony. I would just say, "Hey, like this kind of has mastery over me," and I think that's a widespread thing that we need to be more frank about.
Yeah, 100%. No, I mean
the malformation that's happened, not just neutrally, but the malformation.
Yeah, it's
of the soul.
Yeah, brain level malformation. Yeah. I mean, becoming literal addicts to quick and easy dopamine.
It's dopamine culture. Yeah. What's the book? I mean, people will know what I'm talking about, but we don't live in entertainment culture anymore.
No,
it's dopamine. It's a different thing altogether.
Yeah. It's the pretty girl in a skimpy outfit.
Yeah.
In the picture, in the reel. Yeah. And you click it and you scroll the next one and you scroll the next one and you scroll the next one.
Some flashy thing.
Yeah. It is flashy, shiny, pretty, new. Yeah. And our algorithm's tailored at what you want to look at.
Those things.
I mean, to the extent that
it's both a mirror and a window.
Yeah,
it beckons you to keep going. It's showing you who you are and making you who you're going to become.
The worst version of who you will become.
Yeah, your most base instincts.
Yeah. I mean, appealing to the base desires, and
because that's profitable.
Exactly.
To the people who are putting it out there. Yeah. That's not like tinfoil hat stuff. That's just basic social, absolutely, social media economics.
Yeah. And so that's a dangerous world to live in.
Yeah.
And so I mean, think the reality of disengaging.
Yeah.
And those fears is a overwhelming positive impulse.
And if it's a lot of people talking about like rule of life stuff, I think the technology outran our thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
And so now we're playing catch up.
100%.
And I think that's just reality. Yeah. And so let's actually play catch up. Yeah. Father, forgive us for we didn't know. We were like 12-year-olds smoking in a car with no seatbelt on.
Yeah.
And that's what we've all been for the last several years. And let's put the cigarette down, Bobby.
Yeah.
And let's buckle up.
Yeah.
In the back of the Oldsmobile and let's do it. And so, no, I think intentional disciplines can be revisited. And then for our cultural moment to bring the whole conversation full circle, discerning habits of grace generally, things like praying daily prayers, things like community. And then even thinking about like doing hard things or just playing some offense, an hour of intentional phonelessness a day. I'm going on a walk with no AirPods. I'm going to go to a meal and I'm going to turn my phone off while I eat.
Yeah.
Little things like that. I think we can like look down on, but like doing little things. And again, those are not like the secular world's trying to do those things too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
No, it's common grace. And it is funny how when you begin to do those things, you like leave home without your phone.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man, this must be working.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Because I've done it a few times.
Detached from that.
I've absolutely done it a few times where like the further I get disengaged from the doom scrolling, the more that I'm likely to be like, to get where I'm going and be like, I don't even know where my phone is. I literally have no idea.
You see the world in bright colors again.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like I'm like really self-righteous in those moments.
Yeah,
so
you probably
like
are
far from where.
Yeah, and then it just pulls you back down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is a nice.
Congrats on being better than us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I am so much better.
Yeah.
No, I'll if you want to know how bad I am, we can do it.
We can talk about that. We'll do a separate episode
on my sin. I'll confess publicly.
Yeah,
that's great.
Well, we've been all over the place, man, but I hope there's some helpful nuggets in there about maybe our own struggles and failures, our own like discerning of where we've been, what right now is, and how we can be more faithful. And I hope people can take something from that. So thanks for hopping on the show again.
Oh, it's my pleasure, brother.
Yeah, bro. Talk soon.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Retrieving Catholicity. Please do follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you gotta do. Thanks.